It was a Tuesday. I remember the smell of the rain on the hot pavement outside. I had just finished a 10-hour shift, cleaning the offices of a high-rise law firm. My back ached, my hands were raw, and the smell of industrial disinfectant clung to me like a second skin. But I was happy, because Kevin was picking me up. Kevin, my boyfriend of 3 years. My rock. The person I thought was my future. I saw his car pull up, the engine a low growl against the city hum. I smiled, waving, feeling the fatigue melt away just a little. But when I got in the car, the air was cold, colder than the autumn evening. He didn't kiss me. He didn't even look at me. He just stared straight ahead. "What's wrong?" I asked, my voice small. He took a deep breath, the kind people take before they drop a bomb. "Elena," he said, his voice flat, "we need to talk." My heart hammered against my ribs. I knew this tone. It was the tone of finality. He drove to a lookout point over the city, the glittering lights a cruel mockery of the darkness that was descending upon me. He turned off the engine. For a moment, we just sat in the deafening silence. Then he turned to me, and for the first time, I saw the look in his eyes. It wasn't sadness, it wasn't conflict, it was embarrassment. He was ashamed of me. "I can't do this anymore," he said. Us." I asked him why, my voice trembling. I thought about the bills we were splitting, the future we were planning. I thought about the nights I'd worked double shifts so he could afford the new tires for this very car. And then he said the words that would be seared into my memory forever. "Look at you, Elena," he said, gesturing to my simple work clothes. "You smell like chemicals. Your hands are rough. My friends, my colleagues at the bank, they're dating lawyers, marketing execs. I bring home a cleaner." Each word was a physical blow. A cleaner. He said it like it was a disease. I tried to speak, to defend myself, to remind him of my dream of being a singer, the dream I had put on hold for us. "The singing thing? Elena, be realistic," he scoffed. "It's a cute hobby. This," he gestured vaguely at the city, "is the real world. And in the real world, I need someone on my arm, not someone on their knees scrubbing my future boss's toilet." The cruelty of it stole my breath. He was painting a picture of his future, and in it I was nothing but a smudge he needed to wipe away. He told me he'd met someone, a paralegal from his work, someone more suitable. He made it sound like a business merger. I was a bad investment. He was cutting his losses. I got out of the car, my legs unsteady. I didn't cry, I didn't scream. I was frozen in a state of shock and humiliation so profound it felt like I had left my own body. He drove away, the red taillights disappearing into the night, and I was left there on the edge of the city, feeling smaller than I ever had in my life. He hadn't just broken up with me. He had passed a judgment on my very worth as a human being. He made me feel like my job, the honest work that paid my bills, was a mark of shame. He had taken my love, my support, my dreams, and thrown them out like yesterday's trash. And as I stood there, shattered, he had no idea that he hadn't just ended our story. He had just written the first brutal chapter of mine. The days that followed were a blur of grey. I worked on autopilot. Mop, spray, wipe, repeat. The world had lost its colour. Every gleaming floor I polished seemed to reflect my own brokenness back at me. I moved out of the apartment we shared, taking my few belongings to a tiny, run-down room above a laundromat. The constant rumble of the machines below was a fitting soundtrack to the turmoil in my soul. Kevin was a ghost everywhere. In the songs on the radio, in the brand of coffee I used to buy, in the hollow space in my bed. The humiliation he had served me was a bitter pill I swallowed every morning. He was right, a voice in my head whispered. "You're just a cleaner. Who were you kidding with those silly dreams of singing? You belong in the shadows." One night, I had a special assignment. A deep clean of the old Orpheum Grand, a magnificent historic theatre that was now only used for occasional corporate events. It was a midnight shift. The building was vast, silent, and hauntingly beautiful. The velvet seats were covered in white sheets, like rows of patient ghosts. The great stage was dark, a gaping mouth waiting for a voice. My job was to clean the lobby and the backstage areas. As I worked, my footsteps echoed in the immense space. It was past 3 a.m. The world was asleep. There was no one here to judge me, no one to pity me, no one to see me at all. I was completely and utterly alone. I finished my work backstage and found myself drawn to the stage itself. Hesitantly, I walked to the center, my worn-out sneakers silent on the dark wood. I looked out into the sea of empty, shrouded seats. I could feel the energy of the place, the thousands of performances, the applause, the laughter, the tears that had soaked into its very bones. I thought of Kevin's words. A cute hobby. The phrase dripped with condescension, and in the oppressive silence of that grand old theatre, something inside me snapped. A sob caught in my throat, but it didn't come out as a sob. It came out as a note, a single, clear, mournful note that rose into the rafters and hung there, shimmering in the dusty air. Then another. I started to sing. Not a real song, just the melody of my own pain. I sang about heartbreak. I sang about feeling invisible. I sang about the sting of shame and the ache of loneliness. My voice, raw and untrained but filled with every ounce of my suffering, filled the vast emptiness of the theatre. It soared and echoed, bouncing off the ornate plasterwork and the velvet curtains. For the first time in weeks, I wasn't a cleaner. I wasn't Kevin's embarrassing ex-girlfriend. I was just a voice in the dark. In that moment, singing on that stage to an audience of ghosts, I wasn't cleaning up a mess. I was making something beautiful out of my own. The acoustics carried my sorrow and turned it into art. It was a baptism and a rebirth. I cried yes, but this time my tears weren't for him. They were for me, for the part of me I had almost let die. I left the theatre as the sun began to rise, feeling a flicker of something I hadn't felt in a long time. A purpose. The echo of my own voice was still ringing in my ears, a promise that I was more than what I did for a living. The experience at the Orpheum Grand changed me. It was like waking a sleeping part of my soul. The next day, I still went to work. I still smelled of bleach, but something in my posture was different. The shame Kevin had branded me with started to feel foreign. It was his shame, not mine. My work was honest. My hands were clean, even if they were rough. What was truly dirty was the way he had made me feel. The memory of my voice filling that theatre became my secret shield. I started humming while I worked, then singing softly under my breath. The music was coming back. My dream, the one I had packed away like an old sweater, was calling to me. I knew I couldn't let it die again. A few days later, while cleaning a community center, I saw it. A crumpled flyer on a bulletin board, half hidden behind a pizza coupon. Tuesday night open mic at the Rusty Mug. My heart did a nervous flip. The Rusty Mug was a dive bar on the other side of town. It was known for its sticky floors, its grumpy bartender, and a tiny makeshift stage in the corner. It was a world away from the Orpheum Grand. It was real, and it was terrifying. All the old insecurities came flooding back. Who do you think you are? You're a cleaner, not a performer. People will laugh. Kevin's voice was a venomous whisper in my mind. I almost walked away. It was safer in the shadows, safer to just dream about it in an empty theatre. But then I thought of his smug, dismissive face. I thought of him with his suitable new girlfriend, and a different voice, my own this time, rose up to meet the challenge. What do you have to lose? It asked. I had already lost my relationship, my apartment, my self-esteem. The bottom had already fallen out. There was nowhere to go but up. That evening, I tore the flyer off the board and shoved it in my pocket. It felt like holding a ticket to a new life, or maybe just a ticket to my own public humiliation. For the next week, I was a wreck of nerves. I practiced in my tiny room, my only audience the rumbling washing machines below. I chose a song, an old blues number full of pain and defiance that felt right. The night of the open mic, I almost backed out a dozen times. I stood outside the Rusty Mug for 20 minutes, my guitar case in my sweating hand, watching people go in. They all looked so cool, so confident. They looked like they belonged. I felt like an imposter, a cleaner in a musician's world. I was wearing my best jeans and a simple black t-shirt, but I felt like I was still wearing my uniform, that the smell of bleach was announcing my presence. I took a deep breath, closed my eyes, and pictured myself on that empty stage at the Orpheum. I remembered the feeling of my voice soaring, free and powerful. This is for you, I told myself. Not for them. Not for Kevin. For you. I walked in, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. The air was thick with the smell of stale beer and fried food. A guy with a long beard was on stage, mumbling his way through a folk song. No one was listening. It was just background noise. I signed my name on the list. The host, a bored-looking woman with tired eyes, just grunted. I felt a wave of relief. Maybe no one would notice me at all. I could just get it over with, prove to myself that I could do it, and then disappear back into my anonymous life. I sat in a dark corner, waiting for my name to be called, feeling my courage drain away with every passing minute. I had taken the first step, but I had no idea if I had the strength to take the next one. "Elena Garcia," the host's voice crackled through the cheap microphone, jolting me out of my stupor. My name. She had called my name. For a second I thought about pretending I hadn't heard, about just slipping out the back door. The room suddenly felt very hot and very small, but then I saw a group of people at the bar laugh, completely oblivious, and I thought, they don't care about you, so why do you care so much about them? I stood up on legs that felt like jelly and walked toward the tiny stage. The wooden stool felt rickety beneath me. I plugged in my old second-hand acoustic guitar, my fingers clumsy and stiff. I couldn't bring myself to look at the audience. I just stared at the microphone as if it were a cobra. "Hi," I mumbled. "My name is Elena. This is a song about... well, it's a song." I could hear a few pitying chuckles. My face burned with shame. This was a mistake, my brain screamed. Just get it over with. I closed my eyes, took a shaky breath, and began to play. The first few chords were hesitant, uncertain. My voice, when it came out, was thin and reedy. I was failing. I could feel it. The ambient chatter in the bar didn't even dip. I was just more background noise. But then I got to the chorus, the part of the song where the singer stops feeling sorry for herself and starts getting angry, and I channeled everything. The condescending look in Kevin's eyes, the coldness of being left on that lookout point, the burn of bleach on my hands, the loneliness of my tiny room. The timid girl vanished. My voice opened up, raw, powerful, and soaked in genuine bluesy pain. "So you can take my love, you can take my pride," I sang, my voice cracking with emotion, "but you can't take the soul that I keep inside." The chatter in the bar faltered. A few heads turned, the clinking of glasses slowed. They were listening. Emboldened, I poured even more of myself into the music. My fingers found their confidence on the fretboard. My voice soared, filling every corner of that dingy little bar with a story of authentic heartbreak and survival. For 3 minutes, I wasn't Elena the cleaner. I wasn't the girl who was dumped for being unsuitable. I was a force. When the last note faded, a beat of stunned silence hung in the air. And then, applause. Not polite pity claps, but real, genuine applause. It started with one person, then another, until the whole bar was cheering. I opened my eyes, shocked, and a dizzying wave of relief washed over me. I had done it. I mumbled a thank you and practically ran off the stage, my adrenaline soaring. I just wanted to grab my guitar and escape before the magic wore off. As I was packing up, a man approached my table. He was older, maybe in his late 50s, with kind eyes, a well-worn tweed jacket, and a weary but intelligent face. He didn't look like the other patrons. "That was quite something," he said, his voice quiet and raspy. I tensed up, expecting a pickup line. "Thank you," I said, not making eye contact. "I'm Arthur Vance," he said, extending a hand. "I used to manage artists. A long time ago." I shook his hand. It was gentle. "You have something rare, kid," he continued, looking me straight in the eye. "It's not in your voice, though the voice is good. It's in your gut. People can't buy that. They can't fake it. They either have it or they don't. You have it." He told me he was retired, that he'd gotten burned out by the industry years ago. But hearing me sing, he said, reminded him of why he got into it in the first place. The raw truth. He gave me his card. "If you're serious about this," he said, "and I mean truly serious about the work, the rejection, the struggle, give me a call. If not, throw it away. But don't let a gift like that go to waste." He walked away, leaving me staring at the small, plain business card. Arthur Vance. It was just a name, but it felt like a lifeline. He wasn't offering fame or fortune. He was offering a chance to work. And for the first time I realized that my future might not be defined by the man who left me, but by the stranger who saw me. Calling Arthur was one of the hardest things I'd ever done. It meant admitting I wanted this. It meant being vulnerable. But I did it. And that call was the beginning of the forge. My life became a grueling routine. By day, I was still Elena the cleaner. I scrubbed floors, took out the trash, and saved every single penny. My nights and weekends belonged to Arthur. He wasn't a miracle worker. He was a master craftsman, and I was his block of marble. He was relentless. He dismantled my singing note by note and rebuilt it from the ground up. He had me do breathing exercises until my lungs burned. He made me sing scales until my throat was raw. Pain is a great teacher, he'd say, his voice unsympathetic. But heartbreak is a better one. Now use it. He didn't just teach me how to sing. He taught me how to tell a story. We spent hours dissecting lyrics, finding the truth in every word. He had me start writing my own songs, forcing me to dig deep into the ugliest corners of my recent past. I wrote songs about Kevin, about feeling worthless, about the smell of bleach and the ache in my back. They were raw, angry and sad, and they were honest. Good, Arthur would grunt after I played him a new one, his highest form of praise. Now make it better. It was brutal. There were days I wanted to quit, days I cried from sheer exhaustion and frustration. The glamour of the stage felt a million miles away. This was work, harder than any cleaning shift I had ever done. We started booking gigs, not at places like the Orpheum, but in smoky pubs and half-empty lounges, where the audience was more interested in their drinks than the music. I faced hecklers, broken microphones, and the crushing indifference of strangers. For every one person who listened, 10 ignored me. It was a masterclass in humility. After each demoralizing gig, Arthur would be there, not with platitudes, but with blunt, constructive criticism. You lost them on the bridge, he'd say. Your energy dropped. He was forging me in the fire of public apathy, making my skin thicker, my resolve stronger. During this time, I was cleaning a modern upscale event venue called the Atrium to make ends meet. It was a beautiful space, all glass and steel, a hub for corporate galas and charity balls. One evening, while setting up for an event, I was singing softly to myself as I worked. The owner of the venue, a man named Daniel Sterling, happened to be walking by. He was young for a CEO, maybe early 30s, with a calm, focused energy about him. He didn't look down at my uniform. He just stopped and listened for a moment. "You have a beautiful voice," he said, startling me. I immediately fell silent, embarrassed. "Oh, I'm sorry, sir, I was just—" He smiled, a genuine, warm smile. "Don't be, it's lovely." He asked my name, and I told him. He simply nodded and said, "Well, Elena, thank you for the music." And he walked away. It was a small, fleeting moment, but it stuck with me. He had looked at me like a person, not a part of the cleaning crew. He had seen a glimpse of the other me, and he hadn't judged it. He had appreciated it. That brief interaction was a drop of kindness in an ocean of struggle. I was still fighting, still being hammered into shape by Arthur's tough love and the world's indifference, completely unaware that one of my future stages and one of my future champions was hiding in plain sight. Months bled into a year. The grind was relentless. My hands were still rough, but now from a combination of cleaning chemicals and guitar strings. I had a small but dedicated following in the local music scene. People started coming to my gigs on purpose. They'd request my songs, the ones born from my own pain. They called me the janitor with the blues, a nickname I initially hated, but Arthur told me to embrace it. "It's your story, kid," he said. "Don't run from it." I was getting better. My voice was stronger, my stage presence more confident, but we were stuck. We were kings of the local dive bar scene, but we couldn't break out. Record labels weren't interested in a bluesy singer-songwriter with a backstory about being a cleaner. It wasn't marketable. It wasn't pop. The breakthrough came on a rainy Wednesday night at a place called The Soundbox. It was a small, intimate venue, but it had a reputation for great acoustics and a respectful audience. One of those rare nights, everything just clicked. My voice was perfect. The crowd was silent, hanging on every word. I sang a new song I had just written called Invisible. It was about that night Kevin left me, about feeling seen but not truly seen, about being treated like an object. I poured every ounce of that residual humiliation and newfound strength into the performance. I wasn't just singing, I was testifying. When I finished, the silence was even more profound than at the Orpheum. Then, the room erupted. It was an ovation that felt like a validation of my entire struggle. What I didn't know was that a college student in the back of the room had been filming the performance on his phone. He wasn't a professional. The video was grainy, the lighting was bad, but it captured the magic. It captured the truth. He uploaded it to YouTube with a simple title, "Unknown Singer Destroys a Room with Her Voice." For 2 days, nothing happened. Then, a popular music blogger found it. He shared it. Then a local celebrity shared it. And then it exploded. Within a week, the video had 1 million views, then 5, then 10. The comments were a tidal wave of support. Who is she? This is what real music sounds like. I've felt this way my whole life and could never put it into words. They weren't just hearing a song, they were hearing their own stories. My phone started ringing off the hook. Record labels, TV show bookers, radio stations. Arthur, for the first time since I'd met him, was smiling from ear to ear. Suddenly the story they had rejected was the very thing they wanted. The janitor with the blues wasn't a liability, it was a brand. In the middle of this whirlwind I got an email. It was from Daniel Sterling, the CEO of the venue I used to clean. He had seen the video. His email was different from the others. It wasn't from a faceless corporation. It was just from him. Eleanor, it read, I told you that you had a beautiful voice. I'm glad the rest of the world is finally listening. My company has a philanthropic arm that supports emerging artists. We'd be honored to sponsor your first official tour. No strings attached. The world needs to hear your music. His offer was a lifeline in a sea of sharks. While the big labels wanted to own me, he was offering to help me. I was still just a cleaner who got lucky with a viral video, but he was treating me like an artist, like an equal. The spark had finally caught fire, and the whole world was starting to watch it burn. Accepting Daniel's offer was the best decision I ever made. It gave me leverage. With the backing of his company, Sterling Venues, I was no longer a desperate artist. I was a hot commodity with a respectable sponsor. Arthur navigated the negotiations with the skill of a seasoned general. We signed a record deal, but on our terms. I retained creative control. I wouldn't be molded into a pop princess. My story, my music, would remain mine. The next year was a blur, a rocket ride from the shadows into the blinding spotlight. My first album, Songs from the Bucket, went gold in 3 months. The lead single, Invisible, was the anthem for heartbroken, overlooked people everywhere. My life transformed. I traded my tiny room above the laundromat for a beautiful, quiet apartment with a view of the park. I traded my worn-out work clothes for designer gowns, though I always felt more comfortable in jeans. I did interviews, photo shoots, and television appearances. They all wanted to hear the story of Kevin, the story of cleaning floors. At first I was hesitant, but Arthur and Daniel encouraged me to be honest. Daniel, who was quickly becoming more than just a sponsor, told me something I never forgot. Your past doesn't diminish your present, he said one evening over dinner. It gives it meaning. Don't let anyone, including yourself, believe you should be ashamed of where you came from. He was different. He wasn't dazzled by the fame. He was interested in me. He'd ask about my songwriting process. He'd listen for hours as I talked about Arthur's grueling lessons. He had built his own company from nothing, working his way through college as a caterer. He understood the struggle. He respected the hustle. He never once made me feel like I was less than him. With him, I didn't feel like a project or a brand. I felt like Elena. Our professional relationship slowly, naturally blossomed into a deep and profound love. It was a love built not on status or image, but on mutual respect and shared values. He loved the woman who had the grit to sing in a dive bar, not just the star who sold out stadiums. My tour, sponsored by his company, was a massive success. I found myself standing on stages like the Orpheum Grand, not as a cleaner in the dead of night, but as the headliner, looking out at a sea of thousands of faces, singing my words back to me. It was surreal. During one sold-out show in my hometown, I looked out into the crowd. I saw people from all walks of life. I saw lawyers and doctors, but I also saw waitresses, construction workers, and custodians, their faces filled with pride. They saw me as one of them. I had taken the label the world had given me, cleaner, and I had turned it into a badge of honor. It was a symbol that your job doesn't define your worth, and that dreams don't have a dress code. I was on top of the world, with a man I adored by my side, a man who saw all of me and cherished every part. I had everything I could have ever dreamed of. I had moved on. I had healed. I almost never thought about Kevin anymore. But the past has a funny way of refusing to stay buried. The bigger I got, the more my past became a public narrative. Magazine articles rehashed my story. From janitor to jewel, one headline read. They were always a little cheesy, but the core message resonated. And in some corner of the city, in a life that had gone a different direction, Kevin was watching. I imagine it started with a flicker of disbelief. Seeing my face on a TV screen, hearing my song on the radio while he was stuck in traffic. That couldn't be Elena, he must have thought, the quiet, mousy girl I dumped. But it was. And I wasn't quiet anymore. My voice was everywhere. I learned later from a mutual acquaintance what had happened to him. His career at the bank had stalled. He was good, but not great. He was a mid-level manager with a mountain of debt, trying desperately to keep up appearances. The paralegal he had left me for, his suitable partner, had left him for a wealthier senior partner a year later. His life was a monument to mediocrity, the very thing he had been so terrified of, and my success must have felt like a personal insult, a cosmic joke at his expense. He started trying to reach out. First, it was a friend request on social media, which I ignored. Then, a direct message. "Hey Elena, it's me. Wow, look at you. I'm so proud of you. I always knew you had it in you." The hypocrisy was breathtaking. I always knew you had it in you. This from the man who called my dream a cute hobby and told me to be realistic. I deleted the message without a second thought, but he was persistent. He started leaving comments on my official pages. My amazing ex-girlfriend. I taught her her first chords on the guitar. Lies. All of it. He was trying to attach himself to my success, to rewrite history, to claim a piece of the glory. It was pathetic. Arthur and my security team handled it, blocking him, but he was like a weed that kept growing back. He was a ghost from a past I had worked so hard to escape, and he was trying to haunt my beautiful new reality. The moment I had been subconsciously dreading came after a sold-out show in Chicago. I was backstage in my dressing room, buzzing from the energy of the crowd. There were flowers everywhere, including a huge bouquet of white lilies from Daniel, who was waiting for me in the hotel. There was a knock on the door. My security guard, a large man named Frank, poked his head in. "Elena, there's a guy out here who insists he knows you, says his name is Kevin. Should I get rid of him?" My blood ran cold. He was here. He had found me. Part of me wanted to say yes, to tell Frank to throw him out without a second thought. But another part of me, the part that still remembered the girl crying on the lookout point, knew I had to face him. This was a chapter that needed a definitive end, written in my own hand. "It's okay, Frank," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "Let him in. But please, stay right outside the door." The door opened, and there he was. Older, a little heavier, with desperation etched into the lines around his eyes. He was holding a cheap-looking bouquet of roses, a stark contrast to the elegant lilies from Daniel. The past had just walked into my present. He walked into the room, and the air crackled with a strange, uncomfortable energy. He looked around at the lavish dressing room, the plush sofa, the vanity with its bright lights, the bottles of champagne on ice, and his eyes were wide with a mixture of awe and envy. He looked at me, really looked at me, and I could see the gears turning in his head. He wasn't seeing Eleanor. He was seeing a new kind of status, a new opportunity. He smiled, a nervous, greasy smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Eleanor, wow, you look incredible," he stammered. I didn't say anything. I just stood there, calm, letting the silence stretch. I wasn't the trembling, heartbroken girl he had left behind. I was a woman who had fought battles he couldn't even imagine, and I was in control. "I can't believe all this," he said, gesturing around the room. "I'm so happy for you. I knew you could do it." There it was again, that infuriating, revisionist history. "Did you, Kevin?" I asked, my voice even and cool. "Because I remember you telling me my dream was a cute hobby. I remember you telling me to be realistic." His face flushed. He was caught off guard by my directness. "Ah, well, you know, I was just trying to protect you," he floundered. "The industry is tough. I didn't want you to get hurt." It was the most pathetic excuse I had ever heard. He was trying to paint his cruelty as concern. "You didn't leave me to protect me, Kevin," I said, taking a step closer. "You left me because you were embarrassed. You left me because my job title didn't fit into the life you had planned. You saw a cleaner, and you threw her away." He winced as if I had physically struck him. He started to protest, but I kept going. "Let me tell you what you threw away. You threw away the woman who worked double shifts so you could have nice things. You threw away the woman who believed in you when you were full of self-doubt. You didn't just throw away a cleaner, Kevin. You threw away loyalty. You threw away love." He finally broke eye contact, staring at the floor in shame. The cheap roses in his hand seemed to wilt under the weight of the truth. "I made a mistake, Elena," he whispered, his voice thick with self-pity. "The biggest mistake of my life. She left me. My job is a dead end. I see you, and I see everything I lost. Please, just give me another chance. I've changed." And that's when I knew this wasn't about love, it was about regret. It was about his own failed life. He didn't want me back. He wanted my life. He wanted a ticket out of his own mediocrity. I almost felt a flicker of pity for him, but it was quickly extinguished by the memory of the pain he had caused. Just then, there was a soft knock on the door, and Daniel entered. He had come to get me. He saw Kevin, took in the scene in an instant, and simply came to my side, placing a protective hand on the small of my back. He didn't say a word. He didn't need to. His presence was a silent declaration. Kevin looked at Daniel, then at me, and the last bit of hope drained from his face. He saw the genuine love and partnership between us. He saw a man who wasn't just my partner, but my equal, my champion. He saw everything he wasn't. "It's time for you to go, Kevin," I said, my voice gentle but firm. "My life is here now, and you are not a part of it." He just nodded, defeated. He dropped the roses on a table and walked out without another word. As the door clicked shut, I let out a breath I didn't realize I had been holding. It was over. Truly over. Daniel wrapped his arms around me. "Are you okay?" he asked. I looked up at him and smiled, a real, genuine smile. "I am now," I said. The ghost had been exorcised. The final chord of that sad old song had been played, and all that was left was the beautiful, quiet sound of my new life. Life with Daniel was nothing like my life with Kevin. Kevin had loved the idea of a successful partner. Daniel loved me. He celebrated my strength, but he also created a safe space for my vulnerability. He was the CEO of a major company, a man who moved in circles of power and influence, yet he was the most grounded person I knew. He never once made me feel like I had to apologize for my past. In fact, he helped me embrace it. Together, we started a foundation called the Spotlight Initiative, a non-profit dedicated to providing grants and mentorship for aspiring artists from low-income backgrounds. We funded programs for kids who, like me, had big dreams but small resources. My story, once a source of shame, became a source of hope for others. We got married a year later. It wasn't a massive celebrity spectacle. It was a small, intimate ceremony at the Orpheum Grand Theatre, the place where I had hit rock bottom and found my voice. We stood on the very stage where I had sung to an audience of ghosts, and we exchanged our vows in front of our closest friends and family. Arthur walked me down the aisle, his eyes wet with tears. He wasn't just my manager, he was the father figure I never had. As I said my vows to Daniel, I looked into his eyes and saw my future. A future of partnership, respect and unconditional love. It was a future I had built, not one I had been given. I never became less of who I was. I'm still the girl who knows the best way to get a scuff mark off a marble floor. I'm still the girl who prefers a dive bar to a fancy gala. Fame didn't change my core. It just amplified the voice that was already there. My music continued to connect with people because it remained honest. I wrote songs about finding love, about building a new life, but I also wrote songs that remembered the struggle, that honored the person I used to be. And what about Kevin? I never saw him again. But sometimes, late at night, I imagine him sitting in his lonely apartment, flipping through channels and seeing my face, seeing me smiling next to my husband, hearing a song I wrote about a love he threw away, and I hope he feels it, not for my sake, but for his. I hope he finally understands the lesson it took me so long to learn. Wealth isn't about the car you drive or the title on your business card. Power isn't about who you can look down on. True worth, the kind that lasts, is built from the inside out. It's forged in the fires of adversity. It's measured in resilience, in kindness, in the courage to be yourself when the world tells you to be someone else. My journey started on my knees with a mop in my hand. He thought that was my destiny. But he was wrong. It wasn't my destiny, it was my crucible. It was the pressure that turned a lump of coal into a diamond. He left me for being a cleaner, but in the end, it was he who had a mess he could never clean up. And I was finally, beautifully, spotlessly free. If this story touched you, don't forget to like, comment your thoughts, and subscribe for more powerful life lessons every week.